Welcome everyone to the second event of the Encode Polkadot Club, which is today. The event is Intro to Polkadot, which is ironic. You think this was the first event, but last event we did the introduction to blockchain, and this is more of a kind of deep dive into Polkadot itself. Not going to get too technical. That's for next week. We'll get into more technical stuff. This is not meant. You don't need any prerequisite skills to join this event. I'll try and talk about everything in the general sense. If anyone has specific questions, I can get to them into more detail a bit later. This event is recorded and will go up on the Medium and YouTube and on the website after today. But we hope nevertheless you join us, you stay for this event, ask lots of questions, and make it a nice interactive occasion. If there is any issue, I don't think there should be. If there's any issues with my Wi-Fi, if the connection looks dodgy, it shouldn't be. I'm sitting in my office and it should be all good. But if there's any issues, just put in chat and George can tell me. Good. About Encode, for those of you who don't know, who the hell is Encode Club in relation to Polkadot? Well, Encode is a developer community, a kind of blockchain community, mainly associated around universities, but you don't need to be involved in the university to kind of be part of Encode, in whatever way, shape or form. It is open to everyone. We educate, back and support just talent coming into blockchain, and we work pretty much everywhere across the world, really, and run these big kind of general online events for everyone to join. So delighted you kind of joined us today. Just the relationships in Polkadot and Encode, to be kind of very upfront with everyone. Polkadot is Encode is a grant recipient or a treasury grant recipient from the Polkadot treasury. We went through the full on-chain governance process, and if anyone wants to see the details of that, it's all completely online. This is funded by the Polkadot treasury and went through a completely decentralized process to get funding, which is the first of our kind to do that. So this is gladly brought to you by through the support of the Polkadot treasury. We'll talk about what the Polkadot treasury is a bit later. Overview of what's happening. Education, this is a three-part kind of program. Education goes from July to October, then we go into a hackathon where there'll be lots of challenges and prizes for you to do, and then we go into an accelerator in January where we'll take the best hackathon projects, give them some funding and help them become startups. A word on questions. I'm actually not looking at the chat because it does tend to slow me down. I will try and stop at reasonable junctures to take questions, and also at the end. So please do put them into chat and I'll get to them. And if there is anything super pressing, George or Danny will jump in and tell me I'm doing everything terribly wrong and we need to fix it. Core details, those of you here last week were it's a little bit monotonous, but I'll go over them again. Every week, 5:30, July to August, we have these education events all happening online, recorded and uploaded with slides thereafter, and there is some course material shared alongside the event to learn more. So every Thursday for the next, this and 6 weeks to come, there is a nice educational event where we bring in some fantastic speakers from the broader Polkadot ecosystem and from Encode to help you learn about Polkadot. As I say, this is the schedule. Next week is more of a technical overview of Polkadot. Today we'll talk in very general terms. Next week we'll kind of dig into the detail, look at consensus algorithms and the like. I'm just going to drink some water because my throat is on fire. Week 4 we'll have an introduction to Substrate, which we'll talk about what Substrate is a bit later. If you know what Substrate is, put it in chat as well. Week 5, Parachains. We'll talk about Parachains today. Week 6 is more of a general event. How do you get involved in Polkadot if you're not technical? Jobs, careers, ambassador roles, marketing, get your business involved. What might that look like? Week 7, demos of cool stuff within the Polkadot. And week 8, more demos, but more centered around how Polkadot can affect society. And that is our events schedule for the education series. A little bit last week we talked about what blockchain is in general, and I thought I'd put the slide back because it's a good way of disambiguating everything and do it through the lens of Bitcoin, which you all have heard of. Bitcoin, like DOT, Polkadot's currency, is a cryptocurrency. It's a currency that uses cryptography in some way. It uses a piece of technology called blockchain. Polkadot is a blockchain. DOT is the currency. Polkadot is a blockchain, and it's a blockchain. Blockchain is a way for lots of people to cryptographically agree something's happened without needing to trust a central party. And cryptography, for those of you who are not going to get into it, don't need to know it, is a method for protecting information and communications through the use of codes. So only those for whom the information is intended can read and process it. Mainly a blockchain is like a big spreadsheet keeping track of all the things that have happened, what the current state of affairs are, so that you can use this database to do cool things and build applications where the the kind of the core data source, the information you're relying on to run everything, the kind of source of truth, is not a person, but is software, is code, is something that I can trust and I can verify for myself without having to trust any one person who might screw me or who might kind of con me in some way. And Polkadot is very much like a spreadsheet, but it's a very complicated spreadsheet, but we'll get into that a bit later. And this is the kind of broad features of a blockchain, why we want one. It's immutable, you can't change it. No central party can go back and rewrite history. It's decentralized. There's no central party there. Everyone can be involved. It's trustless. And by this, we don't mean that there's nothing you can trust. It means you don't have to trust a person. You trust the code. It's incentivized. People are incentivized to participate. You don't ask people to get involved for the sake of for any sake apart from their own self-interest, which is a good way to guide people. It's broadly open source, which means all the code you can see for yourself, because you need to verify that, or you want to be able to verify, if you're going to trust code, that this code is right. It's community owned, typically blockchains, and Polkadot is included. I don't think any one party in the world controls more than a couple of percent. I think more probably much less than that, which is incredibly decentralized, and also means a completely different structure of running a company, or in this case, the protocol. It's competitive because it's incentivized, because people are acting for their self-interest. You are asking people to do it for their self-interest, which means they're going to do what is best and what is hopefully the most efficient. And it's also programmable, which in the case of Polkadot is incredibly important. You can build stuff on it, which is very cool indeed. I'm going to take this kind of juncture to just see if I can find questions, although I lost the questions. Where have I got them? Found the questions. Look at me. I'm just going to look back quickly. Parachains I've already covered. That's in a few weeks' time. Julian's putting a definition. Chainlink is an oracle. Talk about oracles a bit later. Don't worry, Johan. We're going to go through the easy bits in a second. Okay, cool. Nothing too major there. In the end, what you have is a system that provides trust guarantees to anyone using it. So it's nothing can be computed without widespread agreement of the nodes. This is the techie definition, but it's just a database where you can run applications on it without relying on a central person, that the code executes itself. Moving on to what Polkadot is. So it's a scalable blockchain. Basically, it's a blockchain that's made up of specialized blockchains that communicate with each other. So this is kind of a different concept. Other blockchains like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, are one blockchain. They have one kind of function. You can build a lot of cool stuff on them, but they do one thing. The main challenge of Polkadot, this is my view on this a little bit, the main challenge of Polkadot is to try and build blockchains that are scalable, that can be big, that can be fast, that can run lots of transactions. And to do that, I don't know if any of you have used Bitcoin or Ethereum, but they're very slow, very inefficient. To do that, what Polkadot does is says, okay, we're going to build a kind of a base layer. On this base layer, we'll do the blockchain stuff, which is basically consensus, making sure that everyone agrees that this state of affairs will happen. We'll run the spreadsheet. But we'll outsource different parts of being a blockchain, the specialized bits to other kind of mini blockchains within it. And they'll rely on our consensus, our security, our kind of base, kind of our engine, but they will run kind of specialized forms of a blockchain. What the result is, you get Polkadot. It's kind of a blockchain, but it's actually kind of a big network of blockchains that all rely on the Polkadot. We'll call it an engine here. That's more of a kind of a throwaway phrase, but it uses Polkadot's underlying engine to kind of prove that everything has happened, to tell everyone that this is the state of affairs, with lots of mini blockchains associated with it that do specialized things. For instance, if something's more based on kind of money, you would want very fast transactions that settle very quickly. But if it's based on maybe storing data, you don't really care about how fast the transaction is. You care about how big the transactions are. This is one small, very example. So Polkadot, unlike other blockchains, is a blockchain basically made up of lots of small blockchains. And we might figure out what those are in a minute. It's founded by a guy called Gavin Wood. He's a co-founder of Ethereum. I'm not going to get into that stuff today. But probably there are kind of 4 problems with Bitcoin and Ethereum. One is scalability, which I've just talked about. 2 is customization. They're kind of a one-size-fits-all. They do one thing. I know we didn't really talk about last week, but they kind of broadly only do one thing. They're not specialized for specific tasks that you might do. 3, it's quite hard to upgrade them because they all do one thing. And if you want to add one particular new feature, you'd have to completely rebuild the Ethereum blockchain, for instance. Polkadot has answers to that. And you want to be able to communicate between them, or kind of communicate between different blockchains. Talking from Bitcoin to Ethereum is extremely hard, and you might be like, well, why do they need to talk to each other? But if you've got 2 actors on 2 different blockchains doing stuff, one might want to send a message to the other about something that's happening. Maybe there's an error, maybe there's something bad that's about to happen. It kind of seems obvious that you want to be kind of actors that are otherwise anonymous to be able to talk to each other across different blockchains. And also scalability. This is kind of the main things that this is kind of always what I like kind of show. Bitcoin does about 5 transactions per second, Ethereum 15, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Only 15 transactions per second. Visa does 1700. Polkadot tries to do a lot more. But anyway, the main factor is this is the kind of scalability we're talking about, what we're trying to solve. We want to get to Visa Plus. We want to be 10x, 100x what Visa is right now, to really blow, if you do believe in the blockchain vision, it's going to blow Visa out of the water. Transaction processing. Usually blockchains process transactions sequentially. So it's a blockchain. So one transaction happens, the next transaction happens. You put these into a chain, into the blocks, and you verify that they've happened. Polkadot completely changes things on its head. So rather than saying that we need to process things sequentially, why can't we process them in parallel? And this comes the idea of the parachain. So Polkadot, you have it, imagine it as a base layer. It's verifying stuff that's happening, but rather than kind of only one kind of blockchain happening on top of it, they have many that are happening in parallel. There's like many different parachains. We'll talk about the major ones later. And these are basically shards. Not that you need to know what a shard is, but imagine you've got Polkadot here, on top of it, lots of different parachains that are each have their own kind of transactions running on them. And what it allows at the end is that rather than one transaction being done per second at a time, we can do lots and lots in parallel, which you can understand. If you can do 100 transactions in parallel rather than only one at a time, you can massively increase the amount of the speed of a particular blockchain. And some examples of these, of different parachains, are these. You have a Kala that's more focused on DeFi. George, could you pause the chat, Arthur, that's just unmuted himself. You've got Fala that's focused on privacy and on anonymity. You've got Moonbeam, which is kind of Ethereum-esque smart contracts. ChainX, cross-chain assets. Plasm, which is more specialized for building kind of dApps and stuff. And the end result is you've got lots of different things that have specializations and that should allow for a much faster, much more scalable blockchain. And what they're doing here is they're basically pooling security. The bit they're mainly outsourcing is the security and the consensus. So that you kind of, it's almost like, I don't know, it's imagine you had a house rather than, and you have lots of different electrical items. You have the computer, the toaster, the oven, the TV. Run one of them, imagine the inefficiency if all of them had their own individual power, like power source, like fundamental power source, like they were all access to different bits of the grid. Like this would be very expensive, there'd be lots of different wires, this would be terrible. Instead, why can't we have them all relying on one power source, which is what you do in a house? They all plug into the same electricity. It's kind of what's happening here. All different parachains are kind of borrowing the security, borrowing the consensus, borrowing the kind of the core basis of the Polkadot. This is what Polkadot is, and running their own blockchains fundamentally. And what you get is Polkadot really shouldn't be seen as a blockchain. What it should be seen as kind of a network on which blockchains are built. And the kind of people often refer to it as like a layer 0, whereas blockchains are kind of layer 1. It's like a layer before. It's a completely different way of kind of building a blockchain. The long-term vision of Polkadot is this idea of I hope it's my next slide. Where is it? Interoperability. For lots of different, you're going to get lots of different chains. So rather than kind of competing with each other, why can't they kind of coexist in some way? And you definitely need this because you very least need them all to talk to each other. But what is there efficiency gains for different chains to kind of share some of the same fundamental kind of features? So this is kind of important. Let's just stop there. Just going to check questions. I see 20 things in chat. I'll scroll up. Polygon also says it's an internet of blockchain. What's the difference? So Polygon, the main kind of thing we're talking about there is Polygon does track transactions offline. It's called a layer 2 solution. So rather than the transactions being on chain, they kind of happen on a pocket. It's like saying, okay, George and I are having a conversation, but we go into a private room, and George and I then have a sub conversation. We come back and we report what happened. You don't know what was discussed in that room, but you do kind of trust us that we've reported what the current state of affairs is. This is basically what a kind of layer 2 is. That's what Polygon does. This is not, everything's on chain with, well, pretty much everything's on chain with the Polkadot Parachains, as opposed to Polygon, which is kind of this layer 2 solution. Would Polygon be, we haven't talked about Substrate in a moment. Yes, kind of, but we'll get into it next week. This is, would it be able to host non-Substrate parachains as well? Yes, kind of, but next week. Yeah, I wanted to kind of, so transaction speed, I think, I don't want to make any big claims about transaction speed because the amount of volume of activity on Polkadot just isn't what it is on Ethereum yet, and there's to some extent kind of a level of kind of battle testing that needs to happen there, and Ethereum 2 is supposed to happen as well. But other chains will make big claims about it. I think the coolest thing about Polkadot is I think it is probably faster, but the coolest thing is that you have this kind of infrastructure on which to build these kind of specialized blockchains, and kind of then you'll see it's very easy to build a blockchain. We'll talk about that next week. It's very easy to kind of build a blockchain. Imagine building that normally. Maybe you have to fork Ethereum and but you don't have to set up any of the node infrastructure. You don't have to set up all the mining, all of this stuff. You can, in this environment, you can think of shards and parachains as kind of the same thing. For storage, Ari is a separate blockchain, just to point out. What's doing the interactive protocols leaving apart? Yeah, this is a really interesting point. So what's the difference between, like, what is the actual experience like interacting with different protocols? The answer is really different. I think this, Carl, you've got on Cayenne, you got to a really good point here, which I would really like to stress actually, which is that under the hood, you don't really care about what's happening as a user or as a builder. What you care about is, okay, speed, cost, the number of apps that are built on it, the number of tooling, the number of developers that are built on it, how easy it is to build stuff, how easy it is to interact stuff, are there things like wallets? And to some extent, all the newer blockchains suffer from this because they just don't have the infrastructure there. Like on some protocols, ARVs and compounds and equivalents of MetaMarks don't really exist yet, or like aren't as sophisticated. And so in Polkadot, a lot of good stuff is there, but it's early enough that not everything is there. And this is, you wouldn't criticize a house for not yet having a sofa as a new house, because it's like, well, it's quite easy to bring a sofa in, or to install a tap. But it's still, you wouldn't want to live in this house tomorrow if it didn't have a sofa. So basically where Polkadot is, and it does have a lot of stuff, and we'll go through, I can show you some stuff. But I think you can run compound on Polkadot, I'm pretty sure. But you will find something's missing. And that's a good thing, because if you know something works in Ethereum, build it on Polkadot. Like, that's a really easy way to get a quick win. Cool. Each parachain has its own purpose. Yeah, broadly. Don't have to. There's no one saying like each has to have its own purpose, but if you want your parachain to gain popularity, you want it to be worthwhile, like you should kind of you should specialize it. I'll talk about relay chains in a second. Okay, I can speak slower. That's okay. Okay, cool. Right, let's move on. Where are we? Okay. So we've got this thing called, where's my relay chain slide? Nice relay, there we go. So the relay chain is basically, if you can think of like the biggest blockchain in Polkadot, it's the relay chain. And what the relay chain is doing, you can see on this kind of image here. Can you see my, George, can you see my mouse? Yeah. What the relay chain is doing is, these are all like parachains. Relay chain is just taking what's happening on all the parachains and kind of putting them all together and verifying that everything's happened. So the relay chain is just the main chain of Polkadot. It's the main engine of the whole system. And so you have the relay chain, and underneath it you have all parachains. And the parachains feed information to the relay chain, and the relay chain, through some complicated stuff called Babe and Grandpa, very long protocol names, kind of verify what's happened. From your point of view, all you have to know is the relay chain is like the main chain that verifies everything's happened, and underneath it are parachains that are the specialist ones that are sending information to the relay chain based on what's happened in their kind of parachains. So the relay chain is kind of like a super blockchain. Its purpose is nothing except to verify what's happening on the parachains. And the result what's actually happening here, if you want to get a bit techy, is the parachains are proposing new blocks to the relay chain validators. Validators are just people that are incentivized to prove that something has happened, to basically miners, and they get some rewards in return for doing so. This clearly is all done at a complex computing level. It's not like a person sitting there going, yes, that transaction looks right. And the validators of the relay chain check that the transactions are looking legitimate. And then what they do is they send it to all the other validators, and you need at least half to agree, in kind of very simple terms. Cool. The result is you get lots of specialized blockchains, all broadly coexisting together under the same umbrella, which I think is quite cool. It's very cool indeed, and it's a completely different approach to kind of building a blockchain, and one that only really is shared by, again, I'm not going to go into depth about this, the likes of Cosmos. That's kind of the main one, and other chains tend to be just do their own thing. They don't go for this kind of idea of having these big interoperable blockchains. You might be asking, well, how does Polkadot interact with non-parachains like BTC and ETH? And what is Kusama? We'll talk about Kusama in a moment, but it uses bridges. And we've got a couple of bridges coming in to talk to you in a few weeks' time, particularly Interlay, which is the Bitcoin bridge. And there are ways you do bridges, we can talk about that, but these are not parachains. These are separate ways of interacting with Polkadot, which we'll talk about probably more next week. But there is a way to get Bitcoin onto Polkadot, and it's a solved problem. So putting this together, you can broadly have three things. These relay chains, or the relay chain, we shouldn't say chain, which coordinate consensus and kind of transaction delivery. You have parachains, which are the kind of mini blockchains underneath, and you have bridges that connect other blockchains with their own consensus, which is we're just trying to get the assets of those blockchains effectively into the Polkadot ecosystem, so you can use Bitcoin and ETH or interact with them. So what is Substrate? Well, Substrate is just the framework in which you build parachains. So it's kind of like a drag and drop framework, and we'll go into how you build a blockchain next week. And this is what makes it much easier. Like it's a framework to build a blockchain. Like it's nice and quick and easy. Like you do lose maybe some of the specificity of building your own blockchain, but you've abstracted all the hard stuff, which is consensus and security, and you can just build the kind of more user experience focused stuff of blockchain and what features you want to have for your blockchain. And I think this opens up a ton of opportunities for if you want to have like private blockchain specific to a community or an ecosystem, if you want to have things that are very hyper specialized, maybe finance or I don't know, goods tracking or law or whatever it may be. But Substrate is just a framework where you can build parachains, which obviously this is kind of a massive innovation that you basically give the kind of tools to build a blockchain to pretty much anyone, which is cool. I'm not saying it's the most easy thing in the world, but it's much easier than if you want to build a blockchain from scratch. Kusama is Polkadot, but for testing. So it does exist. It has matured into a full chain, but it predates Polkadot. It's pretty much exactly the same, and lots of things run on Polkadot and Kusama because it's exactly the same. But originally it was just for testing, and the idea was that if Kusama breaks, no one cares because we want it to break because we want to find out what works on Polkadot. How are we doing for time? So, well, okay, very good. And then you've got the DOT token as well. DOT is mainly for governance and staking to incentivize good actors, and you have to bond it. So a lot of the way kind of Polkadot works is in order to do stuff, you have to prove you're a good actor. And broadly, how you prove to be a good actor is you stake DOT, quite a lot of it. So I'll give you a really good example. So when Encode wanted to get a treasury grant, we had to do two things. One, we had to stake some DOT to verify, to be able to add information to our identity, to say we were Encode Club. Two, we had to do it to be able to make a proposal. Three, to make the proposal at all, we had to put some a small share of the money we would eventually get to run this program, to fund this program. We had to kind of put it up as kind of collateral to kind of take risk that because that we thought our proposal was good, this is broadly what you do with the Polkadot ecosystem. You stake to verify you are a good actor and to verify your identity and to kind of do stuff. And you also have to stake money in order to create parachains, like bond DOT together to create new parachains. And in terms of staking, obviously, I know this is not a real, this is just a joke. Polkadot uses nominated proof of stake. We didn't really get into this last week, but I can give you kind of whistle-stop tour to proof of stake and what this means. Well, basically, this is part of consensus. So it's part of the process of verifying that transactions have happened. So in a blockchain, as we said before, you need to verify that stuff has happened, and you need to do this without trusting a single party. So what we do is we have a large group of, we call them nodes. So these are computers effectively. And what they do something to prove the transaction has happened. And once they've proved it, they think they proved it's happened, they send it to lots of other people. It's called a gossip network. People check that this looks right. Again, computationally, not physically. And through doing this, you don't just have one person kind of say, oh, I think this is right. People kind of tick it. You have lots of different people to do it. And you get rewarded in return. Now, one kind of way to verify you're a good actor, or verify that you kind of you have enough skin in the game to be a good actor, is called proof of work, which is what Bitcoin does. Which is basically you have to use a lot of computing power to prove some maths problems. And if you do that right, you get the right to kind of tell everyone and kind of get the reward. Polkadot uses proof of stake at one level. Which is that in order to verify you're a good actor, or to verify you have sun skin in the game, you have to have a lot of DOT, and you have to stake this. Now, nominated proof of stake just means that you have nominators and you have validators. As a nominator, you can stake to nominate good people that you think will be validators. And validators also have stake DOT and are responsible for verifying the transactions. So instead of you having everyone staking and verifying, you can nominate certain people to be validators. And so we call this nominated proof of stake. But it's supposed to be more energy efficient than Bitcoin's proof of work consensus. And we can go into that a bit more in questions or later. A word on kind of technologies. So there are three fundamental technologies to interacting with Polkadot from a technical level. Rust is the main thing you should kind of know. WebAssembly for kind of building parachains, and also libPTP. If this means something to you, good. Don't worry if it doesn't. We'll go into it next week for technical folk as well. But these are the three fundamental kind of coding languages of Polkadot. And now I want to do two things. Do I have that? Is we're going to go a bit more hands-on, and I'm going to show you the Polkadot Explorer, and so you can see what it looks like, and also talk through some various projects within Polkadot. This has been kind of the general guide, and now I'd like to actually show you what it looks like. Before I do that, I will take questions. I see 33 things in chat. It never really shows you where. Will the parachains provide SaaS to other parachains? Maybe. I don't think they do yet. Probably more for that's more Akala focused, I think. But Akala will be giving a talk in a few weeks, so you can ask them specifically. Can you communicate with one another? Yes, we'll get into that next week. Is it like a smart contract? No, it's not like a smart contract. It's just like a set of tooling. But we can go through it next week in terms of how you would actually set up a blockchain. Can a parachain get removed from a relay chain? I actually don't know. I don't think so. I don't see any reason why you would need to, but Yeah, I do not know what the fragment method is, but I can quickly, if you give me 30 seconds, I will familiarize myself because I have heard of it before. Give me a secundo. Oh yeah, we're not doing that this week. That's way too hard. That's one for next week. How else will bridges be built? What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by how will bridges be built. At the moment, the process is bridges get grants, and we can show you where all the grants are for particular bridges, and they get funded, and then they build them out. Interoperability is game changer. There's no limits number of parachains on the relay chain. How much programming experience you need to use Substrate? Probably quite a bit, to be honest. But it depends if you're a developer to begin with. If you're a developer to begin with, I think fine. No, I don't think that it's that hard, but you need to be technical. Are Kusama tokens more expensive than dots? I assume the Polkadot, I'm certain that even if the token's more expensive, that's because there are fewer tokens. The market cap of Polkadot, I'm certain it's higher than Kusama, otherwise I've gone completely mad. So yeah. Can you see the on-chip? You can Google it. Why use NPS? So the consensus gets more complicated. It uses actually something called Babe and Grandpa, which I can put into chat, which we'll go into next week. But for now, the only comparison is people are looking for a better version of proof of work, because like burning up energy in order to solve complex computation in order to get to the front of the line to verify transactions is inefficient, and this seemed like a better way of doing it. We can get into that a bit later. What are we doing for time? Good. Yeah, you probably need to know Rust. If you want to interact with Polkadot, Rust is the one, which is not too hard, but it's different, obviously, JS and stuff. Is it decentralized enough for 297 validators? Maybe not, but yeah, maybe not. But they were all nominated, so yeah. I don't know what the 1K validator program is. Maybe someone can tell me. We'll be learning Rust as part of this course. No, we will. No, you won't. Simple as. We'll go into some coding stuff, but this is more of a general overview of Polkadot. We won't be teaching Rust. We will be having some Rust coding academies coming up, so look out for those. Where is the smart contract development portal? Well, basically you have to pick a parachain. Yeah. So stay tuned for the Parachain event in a few weeks. It's lots of Rust stuff. Okay, cool. Let me just in 2 seconds. So people are asking what a collator is. So a collator is just they kind of maintain the parachains by collecting transactions from the users, and it's like a middle step between the parachains and the relay chain itself. It's to allow you to run things in parallel rather than kind of having to process transactions sequentially. Cool. Good. So now what I want to do is, that is last week's presentation. Okay, and George, you still see my screen? So I want to show you what the Polkadot, this is kind of a bit silly, but you can kind of see what the Polkadot network looks like. Let me just make it a bit smaller. I assume, George, you can just see the Explorer. Yeah, okay. So it's called an Explorer. An Explorer shows all the transactions, and you can see some cool things here. So these are all the blocks. And what's interesting here is these are addresses, but sometimes you can see identities on here. So that's Stakefish, that's like Zug Capital. Like you can see all the different kind of, these are different validators, Hypersphere, Cryptium Labs, which is quite cool. So if I take Hypersphere, they're also an investor. They are a validator, and they, yeah, what else can we see? Come on, load quickly. Sorry, it's loading excruciatingly. Okay, so you can see their identity, you can see how much dot they have, which isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. You can see balance transfers, you can see their staking rewards. So massive. So this is rewards for staking, they get rewards. So that's like, this is quite a lot of dot. So they must have been staking quite a lot in the beginning staking activities. They started validating there, and how much did they stake? Why can't I see the stake? Oh, that's a tiny amount. Okay, I was hoping we could see how much they'd staked. Yeah, you can kind of see stuff about them. And so they're a validator, they're not a nominator. You've got these council members and technical committee members that are basically part of the overall governance, and these are voted on, who's part of the treasury, etc., etc. So this is quite cool. What other things can we see? So we can see, so if you want to create an account, you can, this is polkadot.js.org, and this is linked to my ledger. You can see I have some dots on it. And if I want to create an account, I go add accounts, and it creates a seed phrase, and this literally creates me a wallet for Polkadot, somewhere I can go and receive dot. So a lot of you probably hold dot on private exchanges. This is, if you want to hold dot like in your wallet or in your ledger, this is kind of the way to do it. Cool. So you can see this is my ledger that's connected to it. You can transfer. I'm not going to do that. I can look at, again, the Explorer itself. I can look at the block details, which all looks cool. Nothing too important here. Let's look at governance. So Polkadot governance works through referendum. Anyone can referenda, anyone can propose a referenda, and they have to be voted through. And the cool thing about Polkadot is because it basically has one single, I'm going to keep using the word engine, even though it's not the official word, kind of way for kind of pooling security and verifying transactions. You can upgrade that, and therefore upgrade effectively how consensus and how the whole system works with all the other parachains, which is quite cool. So you can see the current referenda that are up, yay, nay, and yeah, that's quite cool. Treasury, this is what allocates money, and you can see that there's proposals there at the moment that are being funded. There's bounties up as well. So there's a bounty currently for 2,400 dots for a Polkadot brand update, which is quite cool. You've got the council, which are kind of the overarching kind of people who run Polkadot. So you've got Gavin Wood here, Jutta Steiner, who's also one of the co-founders. You've got Carla, Rob, who's one of the co-founders, Raul, who we work very closely with Encode, and some other people kind of as well, who are also on this kind of sub level, which is quite important to see. Dan, good friend of ours. Yeah, so that is kind of, if anyone wants to kind of have a look at stuff, this is polkadot.js.org. Calendar doesn't show much apart from staking sessions, but it's just a cool way to see what's happening on Polkadot, and so you can visualize like how quick a block time is. That one came in at, it's quite interesting, like the target is 6 seconds per block. Is that coming in? Oh, it's just over. They're all just over. Is that going to go in? Oof. I think it's not going to move on until this one of them gets below 6 seconds. No, they're all 6.2. I'll take questions as I'm going. Okay, cool. The other thing I want to show you is PolkaProject, which is a really good overview of everything that's happening on Polkadot, which some of you kind of are asking about in chat. Is this gonna? Okay, I thought it was phrased on me. So what you can see here is, first you can see some Parachain, and this is a very slow website. And you can, so Kusama is the Canary network, Kala, Parachain, ChainX, Parachain, Edgeware, Parachain. Chainlink is an oracle. For those of you that didn't kind of hear earlier, so an oracle is basically you've got a situation of how do you get real world information into a blockchain. So if I have a smart contract that says, if England win the Euros, give everyone £100. I need to get the information into the smart contract that's, or the Parachain and their smart contracts that England have or have not won the Euros. And you do this by having a kind of, rather than one person telling you, lots and lots of different people kind of providing that information that this thing has happened. And you verify people based on how trustworthy they are, based on what they've done previously. Chainlink is the kind of leading oracle to kind of, Fala is a kind of confidential parachain we talked about earlier. MathChain is a layer 2 blockchain on Substrate. We talked about that earlier. Layer 2 broadly means transactions happening off chain. So you go into a private room, discuss what happened, you come back, you report the results. No one knows what happened in the private room, but you just report what's happened at the end, or the state of affairs at the end. So you're kind of trusted pockets. Bifrost is also another parachain. Plasm parachain. But you've also got things like if you want to set up a wallet, like how do you do that? Where do you go? This is the worst website ever. Why, when I click it, will it not do anything? So Polkadot.js is the main wallet, which I just went on earlier. You go, you can just create an account and you can have Dot there and interact with the broad suite of Polkadot stuff. This is so slow suddenly. Maybe because I've got that open. Ledger, obviously, if anyone needs help setting up their ledger with their Polkadot, I'm happy to help. That's quite easy to do. Trust wallets, you can have Dot on there. Obviously, any of the kind of centralized or decentralized exchanges, you can mostly have Dot on these days, maybe not for the decentralized exchange. If you want information about validators, you go to validator. Is it going to load? Yeah, so if you want to become a validator, you could go to validators or you could go to POS bakers. There's lots of people that will help you become a staker. I pure stake as well. I don't have any particular views on any of them, but if you do looking to stake your Dot, if you own the loss of it, then I would head over to one of those. People talked about what kind of dApps and infrastructure there was on Polkadot, so we can kind of see. You've got a DEX called PokerSwap. My voice is very much going now. You've got a kind of a launch pad for new projects starting called PokerStarter. You've got, what else have we got? A social network, Poker Social, Bridge Mutual, so insurance for smart contracts. You've got Demodify, which actually came out of the Encode community, which is a kind of liquidity platform for Polkadot, and they'll be actually giving a talk in a few weeks' time. Yeah, so lots of different things to kind of get your teeth stuck into. Anything else I'd like to show you? No, broadly that's kind of it on that. So where do we wrap up? So next week we have, so I'll take questions now, and we can take this whatever direction people want to take it really. My laptop is being so slow. There we go. That's great, isn't it? Why is it doing that? That's so weird. I hate my laptop. Give me a sec, guys. Let me reshare. Computer does say no. It often says no. Also, I appreciate the reference. There we go. So next we have the technical deep dive where you can go splash straight in and we'll go through more of the technical stuff, learning how to use Substrate, create your first blockchain. We'll go into consensus a little bit as well. We tried to keep this fairly high level this series because it should be introductory and a place for you to start to get involved. Also, I could watch this GIF all day. It's kind of so funny. But we will go into the more technical stuff, and then following that, speedy. We will have the intro to Substrate. So maybe the Substrate stuff we'll leave most of it to week 4, and do more consensus-based stuff tomorrow. Not tomorrow, next week. And then Parachains, we'll have some demos from 4 Parachains on week 5, and then go into non-technical involvement on week 6, and other cool projects and products that get your teeth stuck into within the Polkadot ecosystem on week 7 and week 8. Cool. I will now take questions. And yeah, then we'll wrap it up for the day. Let's check what's going on. I don't have a favorite Polkadot project. I'm very agnostic, shall we say. Can I add a hard-coded password? I believe you can. I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have a password attached to your Polkadot. I can't remember when I set it up, and I now just use it on my ledger. So, yeah, you must do. Right, you must do. Akala. How can I install it on PC not using browser? I've always used browser. Let me have a look. Yeah, I just kind of use the browser by default these days. But yeah, they're used for the computer version. I don't know where it's gone though. I'm just looking on the GitHub. I don't know where it is, but if anyone can find it, do put it into chat. Have I heard of chads.vc? No, I have not. No, each parachain uses the same fundamental consensus of Polkadot. They don't have their own consensus. Should we learn some Rust before we turn? It would help. I mean, it's not a bad thing to learn a bit of Rust, but it's not a prerequisite for anything in this course. I try and stay fairly high level, but yeah, if you know some Rust, we'll be able to get going much more quickly, especially when we get into the hackathon part, where the hackathon is 8 weeks long, so we allow time for you to start learning code alongside starting to do the challenges. Yeah. No, I'm not Italian. I'm definitely not Italian. What the hell? I'm definitely English. How big is the chain currently? It's a good question. I don't actually know how big it is, but it's like quite big. I would say the whole size of it is not as big as Ethereum, but probably one of the 3 or 4 biggest chains right now in terms of transaction volume. No, you don't need a controller and Dash account for Ledger Live. Cool. Any other questions at all? Good. We'll call it a day there. Each paradigm has to itself or referring to. No, they are parallel chains to the relay chain, which has its own consensus. They do not have their own. Parachains do not have their own consensus. The thing they are using from the relay chain is the consensus. Mohammed, feel free. By the way, George, can you paste the Discord link in one more time? I'd say please, please join us for the next event next week. It's in your. We do send calendar invites to everyone, and also join us on the Discord where you can find me, George, and Danny if you want to ask any questions directly to us. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us. Please do come and chat with us on Discord if you do want to chat. Can we add it to LinkedIn? Probably not, but Encode Club's on LinkedIn. Anyway, thank you all for joining.